Hi everybody, welcome to our Google Plus Hangout with the Buck Institute for Education. I'm John Larmer, Editor-in-Chief here at BIE. Welcome everyone from wherever you are. We're going to be talking today about building global competency in students through project-based learning. A few logistics first. This Hangout will be archived at BIE.org, where all of our Hangouts are archived, so check it out later or tell people you know if they missed it. We'll go for about a half hour today, and you can pose questions on the Google Plus events page, and we'll answer them during the Hangout if they're on the point. We might save a few questions for the end of the Hangout, and if we don't get to your questions, we'll answer them offline on the events page. So please do chime in with questions whenever they come up. And I'm joined by two great guests today who have a lot of experience with building global competence in students and project-based learning. Donald Proffit with Asia Society and their school network, also a member of our national faculty, and Lisa Glenn from Global Citizens down in Arizona. So let's have our guests introduce themselves. Lisa.
My name's Lisa Glenn. Thanks so much for having us today. I am representing New Global Citizens. We are a global competency organization based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we work primarily to provide curriculum resources, multimedia resources, and also resources for students to take action in order to complement global learning programs. So we coordinate with 45 international organizations that we've vetted both financially and in terms of sustainability so that students can take action with really high-quality global partners. So we coordinate those interactions and also provide resources through our classroom and after-school programs.
Okay, so newcitizens.org, is that right, Lisa?
newglobalcitizens.org.
Sorry, newglobalcitizens.org, right. All right, thanks. And Don, tell us about yourself and your work.
Sure. Don Proffit here. Happy to be a national faculty member with Buck. Also, national consultant with Asia Society's International Study School Network. It's a network of approximately 35 schools in 8 states, focused on building global competency among students so that when they graduate, they are career and college ready, but also ready to see the world as global citizens. Longtime arts educator, high school principal, and happily retired doing this important work. And it's good to be here.
All right, thanks for joining us, Don, from New Jersey, I should add.
From New Jersey.
Right, so my first question is just to get us all sort of grounded on what does it mean to be globally competent? So what should a student know and be able to do to be considered globally competent? It's one of those 21st century skills people talk about these days a lot, along with the 4 C's of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. Global citizens often appears next on the list, citizenship. So, Lisa, how about you? What do you think it means to be globally competent?
Well, for me, I think of global competence in terms of the ability to acquire and then integrate knowledge and skills. So looking at all of the skills that you learn as a student as a body of knowledge and a body of abilities instead of discrete subjects. We really want to push our students to go from thinking of math as math and science as science, and these are all separate and never the two shall meet, to how do I integrate all of the knowledge and skills I have received in order to make sure that I can be a global problem solver. In addition to that, though, I mean, we all know incredibly intelligent, skillful individuals who don't live and act as global citizens. So part of global competency then becomes the mindset that you want to engage in global topics, that you want to be a problem solver, to collaborate with others. We focus a lot in the U.S. on leadership, and at the end of the day, followership or collaboration is often equally as important, if not more important, in finding solutions to big global challenges. And really having an image of yourself as a global citizen and seeing that as a fundamental part of who a student is going to be. The final piece of that is taking action. So to me, you really can't be globally competent unless you know how to and want to take action, and then you do go forward and do so in whatever context that might be. So I think a lot of schools get really concerned about, well, my students can't take action in a big, meaningful way, but globally competent people take action on a daily basis in all of their decision making. It's sort of cheesy, we throw around the term think globally, act locally, but that's absolutely what global competence is. So taking that huge body of knowledge, acquiring new knowledge and skills, developing the mindsets to engage and take action, and then actually, taking that action on a local and global scale.
Okay, so you've described a range of things from just basic knowledge and certain skills, but also a lot of things about attitudes and desire to make a difference and being a global citizen. I like that. Don, what's your take on what it means to be global?
Sure. In the ISSN, the International Study Schools Network, we define it as this capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. Short sentence, but there's a lot in that. So we focus our work with students around 4 domains. Investigate the world, that students are able to take an issue and investigate it deeply and thoroughly. That through that investigation they begin to recognize and weigh different perspectives, their own and those of others, both kids they're working with in the classroom as well as people in their community or around the world. To be able to communicate ideas clearly. We also like our kids to speak at least one other language other than English. The more languages they have, the better their communication with people around the world. And finally, very similar to what Lisa said, is this ability to take action. Through their projects, there becomes an act of advocacy, of designing or producing something that will better our place here in the world, locally, regionally, and globally. And the more I think about this stuff and look at it, besides these knowledge and skills, there's something in here about shared values, and it reminds me of the work of the Institute for Global Ethics, this searching for a set of common shared values that no matter where you go in the world, we can embrace. And I think this work, especially kids working together in teams, begins to showcase those values: respect, responsibility, a sense of fairness, working together, and honesty, and a compassion of knowing what the other is going through.
Okay, thanks, Don. Oh, I should have added, Don wrote a blog for us, which was posted just yesterday at BIE.org. So you can check out Don Proffit's blog on global competence, where he lists some of these things he just talked about with the Asian Society's ISSN schools' beliefs about global competence. All right, so next question, what's the connection now between project-based learning and global competence? Why is PBL a good way to build global competence? Lisa, how about back to you?
Sure. So I think PBL is just the most natural way to teach global competence. There's a really good example, Don, actually, that I got from Jean Kovach last week working with the Asian Society, that when you put students in the driver's seat, they're more likely to remember the way to go, right? So the metaphor she used was, if you drive somewhere with a friend and you're not really paying attention because you're not driving. It's exactly the same with students. We can't expect that they're going to acquire all of these skills unless they're actively doing that. And so PBL is great because it doesn't have a lot of prescriptions for students. This is how you do this. This is how you get to this output. And as it turns out, that's kind of how real life is. Somebody lied to me that being an adult would give me a prescription for what I get to do. So it's great for students to be able to see that there's no prescription for the right answer or finding the right path, and that they really have to discover those things on their own and integrate and acquire that knowledge. It really drives student choice. So, not all students are interested in the same global challenges. but giving those many options through PBL really does tend to drive their interest and get students to a place where they are actively, choosing something that is of significance to them. When PBL is done really well, it also includes a really good degree of authenticity and sort of high stakes with an exhibition, with presenting to authentic audiences. Those are things that students will have to do as college students in their careers, as citizens, both nationally and globally. And so this sort of cohesive approach, instead of just taking a lesson here on a culture and a lesson here on some history, that cohesive approach of we are learning global skills really prepares students for being active members of the world.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Don.
Sure, I echo everything Lisa just said. I'm also reminded of the International Food Fair, which is more of a dessert project, as it were. Hopefully there will be some dessert at an International Food Fair. But that kind of leads us to a sense of global awareness, but not necessarily global competence. PBL, just in how it's structured, with that invitation for in-depth inquiry with kids, takes us to a whole new place for discovery. I'm reminded of the work of Mark Gerzon. Mark Gerzon is a global educator. He's an expert in civil discourse, also a conflict resolution specialist who's worked with the UN, and probably his hardest task is the U.S. House of Representatives. But he talks about, and it's a form of global competence. It's global intelligence, which he calls the human capacities that enable us to coexist and co-create with people different than ourselves. So I think this learning how to collaborate, which I think do really well with kids in a PBL setting. So this ability to collaborate with other human beings around the world becomes this ultimate test of global competence or global intelligence. So everything Lisa said, and really I stress the collaboration aspect of our work.
And if I could just add a piece to that, I think we tend to think of the U.S. as not global somehow, as we're isolated from the rest of the world and we're not part of it. Global learning includes learning about and within the U.S. And so really all good teaching and learning should be global teaching and learning. That's the whole thing. That's the whole deal.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Also, Lisa, I want to thank you for mentioning that point about students being in the driver's seat and learning the route better than if they're passengers, like traditional instruction. I love that metaphor, too. I tweeted that actually just last week, so I'm glad you noticed it, too. All right, we had a question from one of our viewers, Joan, about how do you help students know they're at the point where they can take action. Instead of answering that directly, though, why don't we go to some examples of projects you've seen or done which will talk about how students were ready to take some action, perhaps. So, Don, how about we start with you? Tell us about some projects you've seen or projects you've done,
Sure.
Heard about, where students are learning global competence.
Sure. Let me. I'll start with an elementary example that I happened to see at one of the schools I coach in San Jose, California, at Baccarat Elementary School. It's a very small pre-K-5 dual immersion Spanish-English school. And the first graders were getting ready to launch a project. And so they were seated together in their cafetorium, and they were watching, this is the entry event, and I find it really, it was really exciting for them. They're watching a news report. It was Brian Williams, who of course now is globally important for different reasons, or infamous, and he was talking about the drought in California. And this was at a time when San Jose, as well as the rest of California, was very concerned and worried about that state of drought. So they're watching this, watching the parched earth and cracked pavements and riverbeds, and there's breaking news, and it's their principal comes in to the video and talks about he says in both Spanish and English, the kids are released to recess. He says water is now rationed. When they come out into the courtyard, to the playground, all the water fountains have been covered with caution tape, and they're not allowed to use any water fountains. Then when they try to go to the bathroom, they're given one pass for 24 hours, and they're barricaded, there are guards there. And so this goes on. The principal was good enough to send a letter home to parents ahead of time, saying that this is what was going to happen. Of course, it didn't stop people showing up, very concerned. And then after recess, they let the kids know that this was a simulation, and the kids began immediately forming teams of 4 and launching into an advocacy project on the importance of saving water both at home and at school. So I think this is, with first graders, and it could work with high school or college or with all of us, is a wonderful opportunity for kids to take action. A real issue, while it was local and regional in the sense of our West Coast, we face water issues and not having enough water worldwide. And so at this young age with these first graders, beginning to delve into that issue will be something that will carry them through their life, I'm sure, as to the importance of that. The other one, and I'll be quick on that.
John,
yeah.
John, if I could interrupt for a second, what was the conclusion of that project? What did the first graders actually wind up doing?
What they actually did was come up with presentation and a pamphlet on steps that you could use at home and in school to save water. Okay.
Okay.
The other one
Great
is,
history of that.
yeah, it was spectacular, scary for some kids. The other one was a high school piece. It's a school within a school, the Jackson Academy for Global Studies in Massillon, Ohio. And they do this night called Capitalizing on Global Opportunities. The freshmen present a country. They present 3 issues that country is facing. They do it side by side with global corporations that are housed in the Akron-Canton area. So you'll have kids presenting right next to some folks from Goodyear who are presenting, or Quaker, or some other large organization that has a global reach. The sophomores are doing other presentations, UN, Millennium Development Goals. But the one I liked was the sophomores. We worked it with the school that these global companies, these corporations, looked into the issues that they were facing on an international level. So with having offices and factories around the world, the big thing in some of them was, how do we communicate? We send our managers over from the States, they all speak English, and very few other languages, and yet they find themselves in Africa or in France or in China trying to communicate. So the idea was, the challenge was, there were letters from these corporations to our sophomores who had to come up with a solution, a proposal and a solution to one of these issues that they were facing at one of their international offices. So the kids prepared proposals. They had to do a 5-minute video that was sent then to these corporations. And what we found was a lot of these corporations actually took these presentations, the results that these kids came up with, these findings, and began to use it to craft solutions. So for me, that was a very powerful piece. Local, also in a way looking at these corporations who want these kids to go away and learn, go to university, but come back to that Canton-Akron area to continue to contribute to these, to the way of life there, but also to perhaps join these corporations. So I think everybody won on that one.
Don, did the students actually sort of consult with people from the corporation in the course of the project?
Yes, they had an opportunity to interview because those corporations were part of that large event. The Capitalizing on Global Opportunities was a huge event held one night. And then from there, in the sense, that also became the launch for the sophomores, who then went off to do this project that took another 6 weeks after the kickoff event.
Okay, yeah, I love the connection with the adult world there. It must have made the kids really feel like they were, doing something real.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Lisa, tell us about some projects you've seen.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting that Don chose a water example because those tend to be the most gripping, and I also have a water example. When working with Calabasas High School a few years ago, I saw a really interesting project that sort of developed out of student interest in availability of water and the equity of water availability. And this particular group of students was a mixed age grade. It was an elective group, and so they ended up sort of trying to figure out where, and they ended up focusing on Malawi. Malawi relies on a system of wells in order to have water availability, and often if you're not near a well or your well breaks, you have dirty water. And the students, Calabasas is a really nice area of California, to say the least. They were shocked that, you would be drinking this dirty water. And so the students decided that they needed to, number one, educate their community about the inequities in water distribution, because they felt like, if I don't know about this, probably people in my neighborhood don't know about this. Other people at school don't know about this. But then they also decided that they wanted to take action sort of at that micro level of the school community. They wanted to take action at more of a national level and then at more of a global level. And so to answer Joan's question about how do they know they're ready, at the high school level, students can determine that a good deal on their own. What these particular students did was they sort of anticipated the questions that their community would ask. They anticipated what they might want to share, so they started to do their research in that way. And then they also did some research onto what are the most powerful marketing campaigns. How do you make sure that your campaign is really going to stick with someone? And so once they had all of the information about water equity, and they also had all of the information about marketing, they decided not only to have, sort of a table where kids could come and ask questions, but they also sold bottles of dirty water. So they had sort of Dasani water bottles or something of the type that they emptied out. I'm sure they used it for something worthwhile, or they drank it, and then they filled them with dirty water, and they sold each water bottle for $5. And every student in the entire school bought a water bottle. And they carried it around with them for a day to simulate, what would it be like if this was your only source of water. And they ended up raising about $4,200, which was a huge amount. But they also decided that, okay, we're going to give money to an organization that works in Malawi to repair wells, but we also want to support the systemic issues that are causing these problems. So they decided to write to their congresspeople and support the Paul Simon Water for the World Act, so that they could see that they were having an impact on multiple levels. And I think they really, knew they were ready to go once they had this cohesive plan. They could answer all of the research questions. They felt comfortable being the person to do the advocacy. And they were able to see perspectives from their local community, from their school members, but then also to get at the larger perspectives. How would I speak to Congress people? How would I engage with a global community?
Okay. Do some of your projects that you've seen, Lisa or Don, students work with students in other places across the world on the collaborative projects like that?
We've had an interesting experience where we have a school that started a poetry night in support of an organization called the Afghan Institute of Learning, and it's now sort of an annual event. And they really started that because in Afghani culture, poetry is such an integral piece. And we report back to our global partners whatever students do on their behalf, so that they can send a thank you and also sort of be involved. And this particular global partner has no reliable email access. We can't access them reliably by phone. And so, you know, we really just thought we're going to send the report off and whatever happens will happen. And the Afghan Institute of Learning, which is a school for girls in Kabul, actually ended up having a poetry night in response, sort of in solidarity. And so that's been a great experience to show students, you know, really the sameness of American students and students across the world.
Very cool. We had a question from one of our viewers, Kristen, about assessment of skills like global competence. As a math teacher, actually. So can you just briefly tell us, do your schools or teachers you've worked with have a rubric for global competence, or do they try and assess the degree to which students are globally competent?
Is that for Lisa or
well, let's whoever has an answer for that one.
I've got one right here. So yeah, our network has a system called the Graduation Performance System, and it's a set of performance outcomes, I-CAN statements, and rubrics, and I'm going to put the link up right here. Nope, didn't want to go, so I'm going to have to try that again.
It's in your blog.
It's in my blog, right. So if you go there, you'll find it. They are written for English language arts, math, science, social studies, history, world languages, and the arts, and then there's an overarching set of rubrics for global leadership, which would be a wonderful tool for student councils, student governments, clubs, all kinds of other after-school activities. And the rubrics really help you assess student work within those categories of investigate the world, recognize perspective, communicate ideas, and take action. So I think it's a wonderful tool, both formative and summative, for performance assessment.
All right.
And
thanks.
we use a really similar tool in sort of weaving in those themes to each rubric for different projects. And then in our internal evaluations, we're in line with those 3 pieces of global competency we've talked about. So the knowledge and skills, the mindsets, and the taking action.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Lisa. All right. We got to wrap up pretty soon, but let's talk about any other resources you'd recommend for teachers who are interested in building global competence for students. So websites, books, online forums, what have you. Don, you got some recommendations? Lisa, how about if I go to you? We might have lost Don.
I didn't hear that. Okay.
Oh, there he is. Don. Okay, maybe it was me. Don, any recommendations for resources for teachers for building global competence?
Sure. I mean, the asiasociety.org website, go to education, many resources there. This book just came out. If you can see it, it's Global Literacy. It's, I think it's I thought it was an ASCD book, but maybe not. But it's Heidi Hayes Jacobs is the editor. It's Mastering Global Literacy. It's really wonderful, 6 great chapters. I highly recommend that.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Lisa?
Well, obviously, you know, I'll plug both New Global Citizens and also Asia Society because, you know, you've seen the incredible quality of their work and of the Buck Institute. I would also just highlight, I saw a great blog post on the Getting Smart website today by Tom Vander Ark about preparing students for a project-based world, talking about the importance of those project management skills and how that is the reality we're sending students out into. There are also some good resources for getting started on Edutopia, so definitely a good place to start if you're just getting into PBL.
Okay, thanks. Another organization we've worked with in the past is iEarn, the International Education Resources Network. I forget what the A stands for, but little I, capital EARN. They do a lot of projects, I know, where teachers in different countries will have students create videos explaining their culture or some aspect of their country and share those with students across the world. So yeah, there's lots of good stuff out there. So thanks very much, guys. We're about at the end of our time, and no more questions have popped up. So I'll come back to you each for a final word in a minute, but I just want to remind viewers that this Hangout will be archived at BIE.org. You can check out Don Proffit's blog, also on our site, about global competence. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for a hangout. I'll tell you about it in a second, but first I want to get a last word from Don and from Lisa. So Don, how about you first?
Sure. Short and sweet. Everybody just needs to be globally minded. It's almost meditative as mindfulness and awareness. So global mindedness is what we all should be. And thank you.
Right. Thank you, Don. Lisa.
I think my closing remarks would just be that we often feel as educators that there's a lot more being put on our plate. And it was really well illustrated to me by saying, no, 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 no. This isn't more on your plate. This is the plate. Global learning is the plate. So take that and know that this is the whole deal. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. All right, folks. So I hope you enjoyed today's hangout and pass the word. You can look at it later on our archive if you wish. Next hangout I mentioned will be in 2 weeks. We're going to go to an every other week format for 2015, at least the first half of the year. So we'll see you on February 24th, Tuesday at noon Pacific time. We'll be sharing some projects, both have to do with science on biodiversity, one about San Diego Bay and one about Louisiana, with 2 members of our national faculty. So we hope you'll join us for that on Tuesday, February 24th. So thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.